Hello and welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. We're back after our holiday vacation. I hope you guys had a nice one. Thank you so much for joining us now. We've got a great guest for you tonight. If you remember, back in May of 2015, at the beginning of the Yemeni civil war, this Reuters article came out. Iranian ship carries aid and activists into the waters off Yemen. The article says an Iranian cargo ship carrying aid and activists crossed into the Gulf of Aden on Sunday and will reach Yemen's Hodeida port on May 21st, Iranian media reported, in a challenge to Saudi-led naval forces controlling Yemeni waters. A coalition of Arab countries led by Saudi Arabia has imposed searches on all ships trying to enter Yemen in a bid to prevent weapons being smuggled to the Iran-allied Houthi rebel group, which controls much of the country, including Hodeida. Iran says the ship is carrying food, aid, medical volunteers, and 7 Western activists, one of whom was identified by the Tasnim news agency as Caleb Maupin, a native of Ohio who has campaigned against war and the U.S. financial system. Now, this saga of this ship was subsequently followed by various news organizations throughout its voyage. And tonight, we're actually joined by Caleb Maupin, who's going to tell us about how he ended up on this boat and what happened, as well as give us more insight into the Yemeni Houthis. The Houthis have taken a central role in the current Israeli-Palestinian conflict by doing really what the Saudis were doing to them back in 2015. They're now the ones stopping the ships, this time ships that are bound for Israel. Now, if you haven't heard of Caleb Maupin, he's an interesting guy, whether you agree with him politically or not. Caleb is the founder of the Center for Political Innovation. He's a community activist opposing police brutality, war, supporting prisoners, and teaching classes on Marxism. In New York City, he became a media spokesperson for former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark's International Action Center, representing Clark during the Occupy Wall Street protests, the Syrian civil war, and the 2014 Euromaidan coup in Ukraine. He is the author of numerous books, including his latest, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. Caleb Maupin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure, glad to be here.
So let's first talk about how you got on this ship. This ship was coming from Iran. Give us a little bit of background of what the events were that unfolded where you ended up on this ship.
Well, it was May of 2015, and I had been to Iran for a conference of independent thinkers and filmmakers who opposed Israel. And I'd been at this conference, and I'd made some friends in Iran. And, I was involved in all kinds of different, social justice activism in the United States. And I had worked with Ramsey Clark, the former U.S. Attorney General. And I had been to this conference in Iran. And so I got a call on May 1st of 2015 from Iran. And they said, hey, we're planning a humanitarian mission to deliver medical aid to Yemen with the Red Crescent Society. Would you like to accompany the mission? And I said, sure. I thought this was a great opportunity. So I got on a plane to Iran and, I got off the plane in Iran and I found out this was quite a big deal. We ended up going to Bandar Abbas, which is in the south of Iran. It's a port city. And we waited for a few days, and then all kinds of international media was there. And at the last minute, there were some people who were going to go on the ship and pulled out. They were a little nervous, but I got on the ship, and I ended up being the only American on the ship. And we were headed for Yemen, and it was quite exciting. There were lots of Iranian doctors. There were members of the Iranian parliament on board, surgeons, the technicians of an operating theater. We had a whole bunch of flour and wheat, medical supplies. It was a very, very exciting time.
So who called you from Iran and said, hey, head over here, we're going to put you on this ship?
It was somebody who'd been involved with the conference that I had gone to.
Okay. Was it an Iranian government official? Was it?
No, it was somebody who was involved with some kind of nonprofit in Iran. It was a conference that they did called the New Horizon Conference. And the leader of the conference was an Iranian filmmaker named Nader Talibzadeh, who's now deceased. And it was the New Horizon Conference. They did a number of these conferences over the years. And I got to go to 2 of them. And the first one I went to was in 2014. And then it was, the following spring, they invited me to go on the ship.
Okay. So you get on this ship. They make a big deal out of it. Are they making a big deal out of it because they know this is the one ship we're sending in from Iran. It's going to be intercepted, supposedly intercepted, right? That's the idea. But then Iran was saying we're not going to allow this one to be intercepted. So,
Right.
but they
Well,
but they were announcing that this ship was coming.
right. The Saudis were enforcing a full naval blockade of Yemen at the time. They were not allowing anything to get in, not even humanitarian stuff from the Red Cross, from the UN. And that's a crime under international law. You cannot block the delivery of humanitarian aid. And the Red Crescent Society is recognized by the United Nations. It's the Islamic world's version of the Red Cross. And they are an officially recognized international aid organization. So basically, the Red Crescent Society of Iran said, we are going to challenge the Saudis that have enforced this blockade. We are going to try to bring medical aid, flour, water, and supplies to Yemen. We're going to the port of Hodeidah, which is in, area controlled by the Houthi, Ansar Allah forces, and we're going to deliver this medical aid. And it was really a big deal. There were members of the Iranian parliament there. There were all kinds of doctors, and there was a German citizen on the ship, and there was a French citizen on the ship, and I was the only American. And it was quite an exciting moment.
Right.
And it ended up creating quite an international incident. I didn't quite know what I was getting into because almost as soon as we departed, Israel and Saudi Arabia both claimed that we were smuggling weapons to Yemen, which we were not doing. There were no weapons on the ship, and that was later revealed when they unloaded all the supplies in Djibouti. So we were not smuggling weapons in any way, but Israel and Saudi Arabia both basically said that they considered this to be a military weapons smuggling operation, and that they would take action against the ship. So I was on this ship with the understanding that we could be targeted. So there you go.
Yeah. So the reports are that the ship was escorted by Iranian warships. Then later reports said that there were no Iranian warships, but then later reports said that there were Iranian warships, after all, that were joining later on, it seemed, during the journey. What was the truth there?
I never saw any Iranian warships. I was aboard the ship, and we saw American planes that flew overhead and kind of like nosedived and were trying to kind of threaten us, but we never saw any Iranian warships that I can recall. They could have been in close vicinity, but you also have to remember that we were going through the Gulf of Aden. That's an area where there's a lot of pirates, the Somalian pirates and other things, and so I think that if there were somebody, perhaps trailing from a distance, that would have been to make sure we didn't have an issue, because we really had very little to defend ourselves with. If some pirates had tried to board the ship, we would have been kind of sitting ducks. And,
Right.
ISIS was operating in the Gulf of Aden at the time, too. So, I mean, if there were some ships that were in proximity, it was probably just in case there was some need to, protect us.
Yeah. How many days was this journey on the ship?
13 days. And it was quite an experience for me because, I'm a product of our great American educational system, and I only speak one language, English. Most of the Iranians on the ship did not speak the English language, and there was only a handful of people that could speak English with me. But, you're on a ship. You don't have anywhere to go. You don't have much to do. And so, you have a lot of time to talk. And they really wanted to talk to me about religion. They're all Shia Muslims. They're, believers in the Islamic Revolution and the Supreme Leader. And I'm from a small town in Ohio, and I grew up, as a Christian. I had been in a communist organization, and my faith had kind of, I had gotten to the point that I was more or less an atheist. But I was on this ship, and they were just constantly asking me about the Bible and asking me about my Christian upbringing. How do Christians see Moses? How do Christians see Abraham? And all of my religious training started coming back to me. And it was a deeply spiritual experience. I mean, for me, being on the ship, I really reconnected with my Christian faith, because I'm sitting there on this ship, fearing for my life in the center of an international incident. And I'm surrounded by a number of people that are just constantly, questioning me about the Bible, questioning me about Christianity and religion. It was a very important moment. I apparently, and I don't know, I cannot confirm this, but I'm told that John Kerry, at the time, John Kerry was negotiating with Javid Zarif, the Iran nuclear deal. And John Kerry was very angry about the ship, and very angry that I was on the ship, apparently, because Javid Zarif had not told John Kerry about this ship. And so I was informed of this on the ship, that, Javid Zarif And John Kerry had a phone call about this ship. John Kerry is really, really angry that you're on board the ship, and that was kind of a shocker for me too. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're in the Pentagon trying to figure out if a military strike on this ship is possible or something. It was quite a moment for me, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to really engage with these Iranians that are deeply religious and deeply anti-imperialist, and talk about what America is like, talk about what Iran and their revolutionary tradition is like, learn about the Houthis and the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen, and it was a deeply moving experience. I tell people I'm not the same person that I was when I got off the ship as when I got on it. It changed me deeply in a deeply spiritual way.
Well, I want to get to that and talk about those changes. But you said that there was a French national on the ship, and what was the other? Who was
A
the other?
German
A
national,
German.
a
Okay.
German.
So did it occur to the three of you that you were human shields, I suppose, like as a way to frame it, where the Western countries would not bomb this ship or would not sanction a bombing of the ship, knowing that there were citizens from the West on board this ship?
Well, that was my hope, because I knew that the people of Yemen were starving and that the people of Yemen were being bombed round the clock by Saudi Arabia. I mean, they were just bombing them and killing them in mass. People were fleeing, trying to get out of there. There was a food blockade, a medical blockade, and the idea that I might enable food to get delivered to these folks with the Red Crescent Society, that sounded like a good thing.
Yeah.
If I could be there and help make sure that this food was actually delivered, that seems like a great, moral, ethical thing to do. So, human shield wasn't the words that I would use necessarily. I saw myself there kind of as a journalist to report on what was happening. I also saw myself there as an activist, to support the people of Yemen against the U.S. sponsored Saudi onslaught that was, attacking them and killing them. But if you want to use that word human shield, I don't think there was anything wrong with that. And I mean, we need the people of Yemen needed medical aid, and it was being blocked.
Yeah. So did the ship make it?
No. The day we were supposed to arrive, the Saudis bombed the port of Hodeidah 8 times in a single day. And like there was no port for us to dock into. They just bombed the port over and over and over again. A number of dock workers were killed. In addition to that, there were Sudanese mercenaries that had positioned themselves near the port. So if we had pulled up, they would have unloaded on us with rocket launchers and attacked the ship with rocket launchers. Several days after our ship was supposed to arrive, they bombed the medical university in Hodeidah because it had been, we'd been planning to deliver medical supplies to the medical university, to the doctors there. And they murdered at least 23 medical students in Hodeidah in retaliation for their willingness to cooperate with our humanitarian mission.
So the ship ended up in Djibouti.
Yes, and Djibouti is an African country that has relations with the United States, and the Iranians couldn't get off the ship. So it was me and the French guy who we could get off the ship because he had a French passport and I had an American passport. The Iranians couldn't get off the ship, so they had to stay on the ship. They were able to unload all the medical supplies and all the food and all the other materials that were on the ship and hand it over to the United Nations Relief Works Agency. But we were not happy about that because the UN Relief Works Agency is notoriously corrupt. And there was a lot of allegations of them playing a partisan role in the Yemeni conflict, basically opposing Ansar Allah and being on the side of the Saudi-aligned forces. And so by handing over our medical supplies and our food, we were kind of giving it to forces we didn't really trust. The other thing that's worth noting is that, when we did unload the ship, all the allegations that we were shipping weapons to Yemen were debunked. And I believe the Financial Times said that we achieved, or that Iran had achieved, a propaganda coup because it turned out we didn't have any weapons on the ship. Give me a break. I mean, we're trying to bring medical supplies to people in a war-torn country with the Red Crescent Society. They accuse us of sending weapons. And then when we unload our ship and there's no weapons, they call that a propaganda coup. Give me a break.